All right, so we've got a good one today. I've been waiting for a while to post this. I came up with this idea kind of a while ago. I've had it in my back pocket forever, but at this point, I wanted to kind of further develop it and bring it to the best of my knowledge that I can and give it to you in the best form that I possibly can for this video. So what we're going to be talking about today, as you can tell by the title, is going to be standards. We're going to be talking about some recent changes of standards within other lifting domains and what we can do to improve the standards of the natural bodybuilding community, because in my opinion, and something that I'll really elaborate on throughout this video, is that the standards of natural bodybuilding are extremely low. And it's like this for a few different reasons. And within the other domains of lifting, the standards have rapidly increased, even just in recent times, for a few different reasons. So what I want to do is make a couple comparisons and talk about what we can do to actually improve our standards and become better natural bodybuilders. So with that being said, if that doesn't get you excited for this video, I don't know what will, but let's dive into it. So actually, before I even get into it, I did get a new mic. I know you can barely see it. It's like a little lavalier mic, or I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's what it is. The audio is a lot better now, so I'm pumped about that. You guys have been nagging me forever on that one, so I appreciate your patience. The issue is resolved. Up next, I will actually get a camera. We'll see when that actually happens, though. So all that aside, let's raise the standards for hypertrophy lifts. Remember when it was rare to see someone deadlift 405? Now every 16-year-old kid is deadlifting 500. It's because of our mindset, not necessarily optimized training, although that can be a part of it for sure. Right now, the standards for hypertrophy lifts are disproportionately low compared to standards for the big three and compound lifts in general, and I'm talking about strength standards here. So we need to be the generation to set the standards higher and make it normal to have things like 18-inch arms, along with improved standards for every muscle group. So what I'm talking about here is the difference between the standards of bodybuilding and the standards of powerlifting. So what we've seen recently is the standards of powerlifting kind of skyrocket. It went from being a rare thing to see someone bench 315 or deadlift 405, and now these things aren't just normalized, but they're no longer even like advanced numbers. These are things that a lot of people hit, and they hit them pretty early on into their lifting career. So obviously a lot of it's coming down to optimal training. A lot of it's coming down to the popularization of powerlifting. So when you have more opportunities to hit those numbers, as in there's more people actually trying to achieve those numbers, it's going to happen a little bit more. But with all that, there's clearly something within the mindset of natural powerlifters that has changed and led to these increased standards. And I think we are, as a bodybuilding community, far behind, and I think we're lagging behind the powerlifting standards. And there's a few different reasons for that and a few different touch points that I want to talk about today. So that's the first one. I think we're lagging behind when it comes to natural bodybuilding standards, and I want to change that a little bit and at least propel it forwards. So the standards for natural bodybuilding have not been set. We aren't there. In my opinion, one of the biggest issues in lifting culture right now is the fact that hypertrophy lifts are neglected. This is what causes some of our low standards, in my opinion. We have very few lifters who specialize in hypertrophy lifts with the goal of building a bodybuilder's physique. We're all stuck in the mindset that the standards are already set, but I couldn't disagree more. Really think about it. How many people do you truly see specialize in hypertrophy movements? It's not many, and most of the lifters that do tend to train them like fluff and pump. So you see this all the time. The people that train the hypertrophy lifts as the bigger chunk of their program, a lot of the time they're people that just aren't training that hard in the first place. You see this happen all the time where lifters will do like the kind of fake natty fluff and pump type workouts, and it's not always the exercise selection that's the issue. It's not isolation lifts. It's not machines that are the issue. It's their mindset. They don't have the right mindset to actually train hard. So what happens is you have these people that kind of blame the lifts. They blame the isolations. They blame the cables. They blame the machines, as these don't get you good results. They get you inferior results to the barbell and the dumbbell. But a lot of the time, it's not the lift. It's just the way that the lift is approached. If you were to take the same approach that our community takes towards the big three and apply that same mentality towards something like a lat pull down or a curl or an overhead extension, we would see much bigger arms and we'd see much better bodybuilding physiques. So another thing that I think causes some of this, I guess, lack of standards within natural bodybuilding is you see a lot of people, they take the powerlifting route, which is fine, and it builds up certain muscle groups. But if you're someone that's like myself, where I got a pretty strong bench, or anybody for that matter, there's a few people, especially in YouTube fitness, that have built up these crazy high benches, and they say, oh, well, I still have small arms. Like at this point, I guess this is my capacity. I guess a 16.5-inch arm is my capacity, and that's my limit. I can't get past that. But it's not necessarily due to us having that limit. It's to us not actually prioritizing hypertrophy lifts that would build up those muscle groups that aren't targeted through the big three. So the standards have not been set. We are yet to set them. You won't build a bodybuilder's physique from 3 lifts. The best physiques aren't the ones that have a couple freaky muscle groups with a lot of lagging areas, just like a lot of powerlifters. They're the ones that are proportionately built. I'm not saying being proportionate beats being big, but you need an overall developed and balanced physique to look aesthetic or big, and I believe I'm a good example of that. If you look at my physique, there isn't necessarily a strong point that stands out, but I don't have any lagging muscle groups, and that makes me look bigger than I really am. So that's one of the secrets to natural bodybuilding, is having an overall proportionate physique. Like the classic example about like the powerlifter is big chest, big quads, and big traps. They're the muscles that are primarily targeted by the big three. But when you have tiny arms, tiny calves, no forearms, no lats, you can have the biggest quads ever and you can have the biggest chest ever, but when your physique isn't balanced and complete, you're not going to look that big, even though some of your muscle groups are like advanced or elite. So what we need to do is apply that same mindset and kind of spread our volume and spread our training evenly throughout each muscle within your body. And then you can even have slightly smaller muscle groups that maybe aren't even as elite as like a powerlifter's chest or quads, but let's say you have 80% of that and everything else is way more developed than the powerlifter, you're actually going to look bigger than that person. So it comes down to balancing your physique, building up as much muscle as you can in each area, and keeping it overall developed and aesthetic. The next point that I want to touch on here is a little bit more when it comes to the hypertrophy lifts. So a lot of the time when we're trying to train for hypertrophy, we get into this whole like optimal issue within our heads, trying to figure out what lift is best for each muscle group. But typically it isn't like the exercise selection that is the issue. It's going to be sticking with the lift long enough to actually make progress with it. So here's what I want to say on that point. Just overall, stop searching for the perfect lift if you're someone that is constantly program hopping and constantly rotating lifts and can't quite get into the groove. No lift is magic for bodybuilding, because at the end of the day, muscles need to be trained in a variety of positions with sufficient volume, and one lift will never be able to outperform 2 to 4 properly programmed lifts that complement each other. I recommend, instead of constantly searching for the perfect lift and rotating every couple weeks, picking a lift that feels decent and improving it to the point where it feels great. This is something that a lot of people get wrong when it comes to hypertrophy training. They're constantly searching for the lift that's just immediately perfect for them. And the truth of this is that no lift is going to feel perfect the first time you try it. Like, of course, there's going to be lifts that are more optimal for some people than others. I have that within myself. There are certain lifts that I just don't really like that much, and there are certain lifts that I do like. But a lot of the time, the lifts that are best for you and the lifts that will feel good, they don't feel perfect right off the bat. They feel perfect once you've actually developed your form and technique, improved a little bit on your strength, improved a little bit on your volume, and just got enough practice in the first place. So if you want to actually improve some of these hypertrophy lifts, you have to stick with them long enough to actually get better at them. Like, this is one thing that we can take from powerlifting is it's squat, bench, and deadlift. Like, it doesn't matter if you like those lifts or if you don't like those lifts. Like, that's what it is. You have to find a way to make those lifts good for you. And yeah, are there some people that just aren't built for powerlifting? Of course. But at the end of the day, every powerlifter has to find a way to make those lifts optimal for them. And we kind of have to take that same approach when it comes to bodybuilding. And I'm not saying you need to like specialize in just one lift for your biceps or something, but do what you can. Like take your time tweaking your form and technique and figure out what the best piece of equipment is. Do you like cables? Do you like machines? Do you like dumbbells? Like slowly play around with that a little bit and then pick one that feels pretty good and get better at it. Change your grip up a little bit, change your tempo, change your position slightly. Like make these little tweaks, improve that lift to the best you can, get stronger at it, stick with it. The longer you stick with a lift, typically the better you get at it. So do that, stick with that lift for a while, and you'll be making pretty good gains off of that. So what I'm saying is build a foundational program. Obviously, you can rotate lifts. I'm not going to talk about that today, but pick what lifts are good for you. Improve them to make them great for you in the long run. So we also have very few role models for natural bodybuilding. My goal is to change that. The more natural bodybuilders we have, the higher the standards become. We just witnessed the same thing in powerlifting within the past 5 years. And in my opinion, bodybuilding is next. So obviously what I've talked about a little bit throughout this video is that the standards for powerlifting have become really high and our training is getting better as a result. And I'm not talking about like our like personal training, but powerlifters in general. Their training is better. Their mindsets are better. Their mindset that they go into and the standards that they achieve are much higher than they were, say, 5 or 10 years ago. And we have to do the same thing with bodybuilding. We just don't have that many people that are legit role models for natural bodybuilders. We have obviously a couple people within this natural bodybuilding community, but it's still really small. You don't see a whole ton of like elite natural bodybuilders in most commercial gyms anyways. So I think we just have to understand and recognize that, yeah, our standards are pretty low right now, and we need to be the ones that kind of increase it. So one thing that I want to take up on this channel is not just teach you guys about my own training philosophy and how to lift properly, but I want to improve the standards, and I want to do that within my own physique. So obviously, I'm still young. I'm nowhere near my capacity. I have a long ways to go, and I totally understand that. So what I want to do is live up to that potential, probably surpass the potential that I believe is in my head right now, and improve the standards for natural bodybuilding. And I want to do that with the most thorough training I possibly can for myself and just see what we can do. I'm curious to see what can happen with the standards of natural bodybuilding over the next few years. And I do genuinely believe we can increase the standards farther than we ever thought. I think we can increase what we think our arms can get to. Like if we think that the average person caps off at like 16 and a half inch arms, I think we can improve that to maybe like a 17, 18, maybe an 18 and a half or 19 inch arm. And I know that's just one example, but it's the same thing with powerlifting. Let's do the same thing here with natural bodybuilding. I know we can improve the standards, so let's all kind of strive to do that together. If you guys have any questions or any thoughts on this video, definitely let me know in the comments. This stuff is, I think, cool to talk about. So yeah, what do you think the standards are? What do you think we can achieve naturally? Let me know. With that being said, thanks for watching.